Anyway, at least you'll be able to see what's going on. There's really just music playing in the background. Yeah, we can. There you go, talk. Say hello. I don't know.
All right, so yeah, we've been working together for, I don't know, more than 20 years.
Yeah.
This is
Well, I think you guys hear us.
yeah.
Oh,
There you go.
It's kind of a small room anyway, so. I grew up here in Ohio. I left when I was 19, went to LA, started working in the film industry, doing makeup effects, and started out working, anybody know who Charlie Band is? Charles Band, Full Moon Productions. It used to be called Empire Pictures.
Productions. Yeah.
I started working on movies like Reanimator, Troll, From Beyond, what else? Eliminators, Ghoulies, stuff like
Yeah,
that.
stuff like that for a guy named John Carl Beekler, who is the, what can you say? What can you say about John Beekler except he is the Ed Wood of makeup effects, pretty much?
He's like a he started out in the Roger Corman days.
Yeah.
And we used to do these movies for very little money, and they do like 10 of them a year. So we were the kind of he was their in-house guy, and we'd work on. What was great about that was working on 6 movies a year, 10 movies a year, and building our credits up when we were young. I mean, we were 19, 20 years old, and
He paid dirt wages.
yeah, we made nothing. I mean, we slept. Everybody had like 4 guys, 5 guys sleeping in the same house. You have mattresses on the floor. It was kind of big party house. And anybody who came in from out of town that was like looking to get into the business, makeup artists from New York or whatever, they'd flop on our floor, and we called it the House of Wayward Makeup Artists. But we would work on all these movies over and over, and eventually we started, working with other artists on bigger films. Like I was working at Beekler's until Night of the Creeps came up, and then Dave Miller offered me a job on Night of the Creeps for 3 or 4 months. And eventually we worked with, in those days, before we even had our own companies, we were freelancing. And just freelance artists, we'd juggle from job to job. And we'd go work at like Stan Winston's on, like I worked on Invaders from Mars and Aliens. And then, to another shop to work on 976 Evil or whatever with Kevin Yeager's. And Howard, my partner Howard Berger, KMB Effects Group is a company I formed in LA, and Greg Nicotero, they were my partners, and when we first started, that's basically what we did. We juggled from shop to shop, and eventually you started working together, you start working with the same people over and over again. So we decided to start our own company after 5 or 6 years of freelancing.
Thank you.
And that's when we formed KMB Effects Group. Our first movie was Intruder.
That was,
Scotty Spiegel movie. He wrote Evil Dead 2. Yeah, he wrote Evil Dead 2. And then he did his first film as this little movie about the supermarket killer. Shot real low budget, but we had all these really kind of neat gore kill gags. And that was our first show. We, they had no money, but we needed a credit, so we did the show for no money and got our first film credit as a company.
As KMB Effects.
So, and then from there on, out, we just kept working on. It was the '80s, so there was sequels to like everything we grew up on. There was a Nightmare on Elm Street sequel. There was a Halloween sequel. There was the Chainsaw sequels, and we just ended up working on all of them, over and over. All these movies with filmmakers that we grew up loving, which was kind of cool. That was my favorite thing, is getting to work with John Carpenter and Tobe Hooper and all these guys we came up in the business, or came up loving,
Watching their movies.
And then we got to work with Don Coscarelli, we did Bubba Hotep, we did the Phantasm movies with. So yeah, basically, once we started KMB, we were known as the Gore Guys initially, and we just worked on tons of gore movies, and then we had to break out of that because we didn't get pigeonholed as the Gore Guys, and we weren't just the Gore Guys. We made animals and all kinds of stuff, and comedy gags. We worked on like Police Academy movies and stuff.
And I think the really big breakout one was Dances with Wolves.
Dances with Wolves was one of the ones. That and Gross Anatomy were the 2 movies. One was a Disney film, the other one was Costner's movie, but Orion put out.
Yeah.
But they, we went in and met with Kevin, and they wanted all these buffaloes built, and we never built them before. So, of course, it's that whole thing. Well, you've never built a buffalo, then how do we know you can build a buffalo? But we had just done this movie called Gross Anatomy for Disney with Deborah Hill. Do you guys know who Deborah Hill was? Or is? Produced the John Carpenter movies. And she produced this film. It was a comedy, romantic drama. But we had to do these progressions of corpses that go through dissection for gross anatomy school, for med school. And so we had to go research that, go watch them actually do the process, and then create all these, like, I don't know, 12, 15 bodies for it that go through stages. And they looked really good. They were anatomically correct. And so what happened was Costner, that was our kind of ticket into Costner's, showing him that kind of work. And he went, well, you know what? If you guys can do this kind of work, then I think you can do the buffaloes. And the other thing that was great was we were a young company, and we were way cheaper than Stan Winston, and he was through the roof on his price, so we ended up getting the gig.
And
so,
Stan was always through the roof,
Yeah.
but he could get away with it because he's buddies with Steven Spielberg
Yeah.
and all those folks.
But yeah, and Costner was making this movie for, you know, not a lot of money at the time. It was like $15, $20 million film for a big epic movie, you know. And so they gave us a shot, and after that we started doing lots of animal shows.
Yeah.
Wild America, we did alligators and
Eraser and alligators and what else? Crocodile.
Gary Jones the movie.
That would be, no, that's that thing. It was supposed to represent, I believe, in Crocodile, it was supposed to represent a 51-foot long crocodile because the one for Lake Placid that Stan was, and they could afford to do the whole thing, was 50 feet long. So we had to buy
They had to top it.
We had to buy 1 foot. But no, we did tons and tons of dogs, and we did the polar bears from Alaska.
Lots of snakes, a lot of reptiles, and everything in films, like, or even in TV shows, like X-Files. We did a lot of episodes of X-Files. Did a lot, Hercules and Xena.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, Gary Jones, unfortunately, isn't here. I guess he'll be at Horror Hotel, I think. But he directed second unit and then
first unit on Xena.
On
Hercules,
Xena. The first film that Gary Jones did called Mosquito, which has been out there, and hopefully we'll be able to find a copy of it on DVD. He actually made that, I think, while he was still working the line at a Ford plant. He took his vacation off. That's from You're Next, the one I went out to Missouri to.
Yeah, and Gary was from Detroit, Michigan, and he started out working with Sam Raimi about the same time I was working on Evil Dead 2. That's where I met Gary, so you'll hear these stories later. But and the whole kind of Sam Raimi camp, Dave Goodman and Bruce and Scotty Spiegel, all those guys grew up together. So we were kind of the Midwest connection at the time. We were the guys from Ohio, but, you know, working in North Carolina on Evil Dead 2 all together, and that's kind of where we all met. Not Al, but Gary and everyone. And
that's from
Grandpa from the last Texas Chainsaw movie. Me and Al went and applied.
to make up for
107. That's my son. 107-degree weather out there,
and fire gags on the set on top of 107 degrees, and the poor guy had his entire face was covered with silicone appliances, which unlike, you know, foam latex kind of breathes sort of, but silicone is solid, very flexible, nice and gooey, but he had appliances that covered everything except his ears, and he had nice droopy ears, and his eyeballs. And so between takes, we'd have to run over there and just like squeeze the juice out of him.
Shoot out.
There would just
pinholes.
Sweat would come out of his eyeballs. It looked like he was crying. But it was the gentleman that played Grandpa, John Dugan, played Grandpa in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it was at the beginning. It was supposed to be a flashback to the next day, and then it, you know, flashes forward 30 years or whatever it was supposed to be. But when he initially played the character, I think he was 20-some years old, and it took 8 hours to put the makeup on him. But with the appliances we had, I think we got it down to like 2.5 hours. I believe that's how much time it took. And all we tried to do was keep him inside the air-conditioned trailer, because, you know, the second you go outside, it was just humid as all get out, and like you said, 107 degrees. And we hated it, and he had to really be hating, but he was a good sport. He was a great guy. And I think we only had to apply for once. They were thinking a second day, but we never had to, which is good. But I met Bob in California. I was born and raised in Lakewood, and I thought I needed to know everything about makeup before you went out there, especially during the 80s. And get out there, I was just like, I should have done this years ago. And I worked initially with what's his face? Dave Barton, another small
Another
shop.
Ohio guy.
Another Ohio guy. A lot of people that are
Tony Gardner, Dave
just from
Barton,
Cleveland.
Wes Craven.
All these people, a lot of folks are from the Midwest. They're from Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and you just like finally make the migration out there. And
Kevin Yeager.
exactly, yeah, Kevin Yeager. A lot of folks from here.
His
But,
parents still live in Lexington.
Right. Kim Costner's getting a place in Bay Village.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he liked it so much in
That's cool.
draft day. So hopefully he'll bring some more business to Ohio. That would be good. But moved out there, worked around, worked with Stan Winston and who the heck was the other, the early one, Chiodo Brothers, who I love that because as well as doing their goofy little makeup type things, everything's pink and purple with them, but they also did stop motion, so that's what I was initially wanted to do, but Ray Harryhausen wasn't willing to give up his job yet, so I ended up doing makeup. And then eventually got a call from Howard, and yeah, pretty much worked with you guys off and on for like 10 years in California. It was like the main place that I would go to. And met his folks out there when they came to visit. And eventually we had kids, and Bob was directing, and he didn't need to be in LA to do that, so he moved back to Ohio, and a year later I did the same thing with my kids. And we've been doing this here for 11 years now. Yeah. And we travel a lot more, I think, now than we did back then, because we generally make the stuff at the shop in Crestline and then ship it wherever it needs to go, and we go there and then implement the effects.
A lot of during the '80s, there's a huge group of guys that came up in business together at the same time, and so it was a pretty tight knit family. Like Jim Leonard just retired.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
that.
but a lot of the guys, like Everett Burrell, who was one of the guys doing makeups with me all the time at Beekler's and then beyond, he's now one of the top visual effects guys out there. He just did the last Die Hard film, did Battle in L.A., visual effects producer.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of guys that started doing what we do segued into that. We do a little bit of that as well.
Yeah.
Not big, I don't love it, but but we'll do it on a movie. We'll supervise the visual effects as well. But you kind of, once you start doing makeup effects and working with visual effects people, you start to learn, okay, yeah, I need a background plate, I need these elements to piece this together. And because we interact with so many different departments doing makeup effects, with wardrobe, stunts, pyro, all of that, you start to, zero in on what is actually needed to pull something off, and you can really interact with them really easily.
And we tend to do stuff that's part of not really fantasy things. So if we're doing something, it's like, we don't want to spend the time on set bringing a live squib or something. Or you might do that and wasn't quite bloody enough. We go in there and add additional blood or bullet streaks and things like that to, just make it more dynamic, but it's not.
Or safety issues.
Yeah.
A lot of it's a safety issue.
Yeah.
Shooting point blank at somebody in the head, now you can do it with a digital gun flash and digital hit, and it's safe.
Yeah.
Whereas before,
You had to
you
do
couldn't
it.
get close with a full load and blow somebody's ear off or whatever.
And another example is we did the visual effects for Devil's Rejects, and most people have no clue how many shots involved that, because they had to shoot it really quickly. At the end of the film, when they're in the burning building, they had like one little flame bar. They couldn't do any more than, what's that? But they couldn't at the location they were shooting, they couldn't have any more than that. So we ended up doing huge amounts of digital fire and then shot some footage of some real fire at night that we could go back in and rotoscope around these guides and add the fire to it so that it was much safer than it looked. And
at the end of the film, actually, when they're shooting and driving in the car, you know what I'm talking about? You guys seen Devil's Rejects? That whole thing was supposed to have been done with squibs, pyro going off in the car. A shotgun went off next to Sherry Moon's head with a load in it, and
the blank butt
blew her eardrum out almost, and she refused to have the live ammo go off around her during that scene. So suddenly it became all digital effects. So that we ended up doing, instead of 10 shots, it was like, 60 shots.
We should put that in the visual effects reel.
And we had everything from bullet hits on the door, windshield hits, sparks, blood, and everything in there.
Yeah, a lot of the shooting in there, because of the distance from the camera, there was no place to hide anybody, no time to like put an appliance on the one character's neck who gets wings, so that's all completely added after the fact. And at that time, I think thankfully we had Dave Mather there, because he was another makeup effects guy that went over to the dark side and
Started doing digital.
Exactly.
But he doesn't really go up.
Yeah, he does. But so all that stuff was tracked. The knife throwing bit, as a matter of fact, that's part of the visual effects reel. You see where there are extensions, or like extension of the knife that actually wasn't there. It was a cut-off blade, pulls it out of her chest. Actually, the knife hitting her and hanging in there was all tracked. And some of these things would take weeks.
They took a long time, mainly because the blood coming out, she had a bra on. The blood came out, had to soak into the bra, plus then drip down her chest. And had to look natural. We redid that like 100 times for Rob, because he was very picky about it. But, and it was very hard to do. It's in here.
It's in here. You'll see some of that sort of behind the. Oh, there you go. Display.
And a lot of what we have in here interacts with makeup effects. Hiding blood tubes, digitally removing things.
Yeah.
Adding things. Well, some of the stuff's just straight on. You need tanks in a city street. They couldn't afford to have the tanks, so we put them in. Things like that. Helicopters. These are all digital bullet hits. There's a truck hit. This is interesting. We just did 2 passes on this one with the truck, one with the actress, one with the truck, and then we merged them together. It's a lock-off shot. There's the extensions on the knives. Like all this has been added, as you can see there. Anybody got any questions when watching this?
Admit it. You're the one who killed him. You seduced him, gained his confidence. And then when he wasn't looking, you reached into your purse and without conscience or remorse, you pulled out a gun and shot him. And cut. Curious? Visit theindygathering.com, a film festival, and so much more.
Welcome to Movie Outline 3, your first step to a successful screenplay. Movie Outline is powerful screenplay development software for both the amateur and the professional screenwriter, which uses the simple technique of step outlining to build your story, characters, and screenplay scene by scene. Visit www.movieoutline.com to download the free demo today.
Welcome to Horror Hotel.
Like that thing there on the side of his neck, there was no makeup on location. It was just all added after the fact. And one of the hard things with comping the fire in here is that Sid Haig has this extremely sort of wispy beard, and trying to rotoscope that, it was like having to feather like 4 or 5 mats that were overlapping each other, and putting the hair back in without having blocking out the fire behind him, because you had to see it through there. And the same thing with the long stringy hair on the fire.
We also did the digital effects in the first Hostel film, and K&B did the makeup effects, my old company. Then on the third film, we did the makeup effects because we shot in Detroit. But it's a film called Living Hell. We had a ton of like these tentacles that crawl up into your skin, go through your flesh, and we had a lot of combination of makeup effects and digital effects and things like that we couldn't do physically, like have tentacles growing in your eyeballs.
And that was another digital nightmare too. I think it went a little over budget because of the director.
Well, it was over. They had way too many shots for the budget. We shot these movies. Here's a stitched together shot. This is an all digital set environment with the digital tanks running through it, and then it pans up and there's actually helicopters flying over the town. Of course, you know, it's a small movie. We didn't have a lot of money to do all this stuff, but just shot plates and then added it in later. I'm trying to think what else. Currently, we have a movie coming out September 19th. Keep your eyes out for it. It's called Tusk. It's Kevin Smith's new movie. We're working on another film called Yoga Hosers. We just started with him. Start shooting in about a week.
2 weeks?
Yeah.
How Bob's gonna throw, just thinking about it.
Yeah, I'm going to throw up because
Bob's gonna
nothing's
throw
done. But
Those are both Kevin Smith?
yeah.
I think he's got 2 more in the
Yeah,
pipeline.
we're basically doing 4 films back to back, kind of.
Thank God.
With him. I think he's announced all of them, but Yoga Hosers is the next one. Tusk was an interesting movie to do. I don't know if anybody's seen the trailer yet. It's out. Justin Long plays someone that Michael Parks captures and then tortures and turns him into a walrus. So,
Really?
Hence
yeah.
Tusk.
Yeah, which is, I mean, it's kind of, I'm not giving anything away, it's out there, but they haven't revealed what it looks like yet, which is fine.
It is disturbing, though.
Yeah.
It is very disturbing. When I was reading the script, as a matter of fact, I was sitting there reading it, it starts this description, and I just kind of pushed myself away from the table. It's like, this is about effed up. I can't believe we're doing it, and when we did it, well,
It was pretty twisted. It was a pretty fast schedule for us. We had like 5 weeks to do it.
we
Ridiculous,
needed
but
like 8 or 10.
yeah.
But literally, it was like October or late September last year.
And then we
Got the
just-
call, got started, I think, like the last week of September, worked through October, and then November, we were on set in North Carolina. And it's coming out, it hasn't even been a year. Shot it, edited it, I think he had it sold the week after he finished, he wrapped production.
Yeah. He was cutting on his laptop the entire time we were shooting, so he'd sit up and look at it. So we actually saw like a half an hour of the movie before we even left the set. It was kind of cool. Also, Johnny Depp is in the movie, playing a character. It's pretty funny. The cool thing about working with Kevin, and it's like working with Robert Rodriguez or Quentin or any of these guys that grew up that are our age, we grew up in the same era, is that we have a shorthand, which is really cool. So
Yeah.
you can talk to Kevin and just zero in on one thing that we remember from a movie when we were kids, and it's like, bingo, you got it. You know, it's like, so, you know, you just say, It's like this, and this.
Right.
Boom, you got
That's
it.
one of the gags for upcoming, not giving anything away and having the phone conversation. We had a Skype conversation. And it was Kevin and the producers and line producers and office coordinators and all these folks. And so we're discussing this gag. And then Bob says, Big Trouble in Little China, and he's like, that's it, that's exactly it, right there. And so we know what we're talking about. It's, you know, I needed more, what the heck were we working on? I can't remember something, and I think he and I were having a discussion, and Bob said, I wanted more Army of Darkness rather than Evil Dead 2. It's like, okay, yeah, I know what you're looking for. I mean,
Less witchy pooch.
less witchy pooch, yeah, there you go.
No.
That's what it was, yeah.
That's Sam's the same way now. Sam Raimi does the same thing. So, and it's really funny because it's like literally everybody that grew up on Famous Monsters and, you know, Fangoria or whatever when we were kids and watched all the late night horror host shows and stuff. We all have the same kind of mindset.
The mentality, it's you're like, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's this, not that. That's it.
And it's liberating working with those directors. We work
Oh,
with
yeah.
so many of them that just don't know what they just don't know what they want until they see it.
Right.
And they can't describe it. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet.
But when I see it, I'll let you know. It's
Yeah.
like, well, where do we jump off at? You know, we can't just sit here and draw things all day long and hold them up and let you look at it and not know what you want. We got to get started. It gave us 4 weeks. We needed 8, so kind of screwed here. But any questions so far?
Kevin, a pretty sarcastic guy in person?
No, he's just fun.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
Got a lot of
he's always
energy.
sarcastic, you know?
Yeah. And he really knows what he wants, works well with the actors, you know, and he writes his script, so, you know, he knows exactly what he needs piece-wise, put it together.
Yeah, he pretty much
Frugal filmmaker, so.
He pretty much has it edited together in his mind before he even sets foot on set. And but on the Tusk, he would let a lot of it is Michael Parks and Justin Long together for a lot of it. But he would let them run and he'd say, okay, and he'd start popping in, talk about this, talk about that, and they would just run with it. And there were some takes there that would be 20 minutes long. You just having them go back and forth and watching the film, you realize that wasn't in the script. I remember being there when he was doing that, and it just was something that had to be in the film. I mean, if you saw the trailer for it, this bit where he goes, you know, screaming, echoing what Justin is doing. Just, this tooth-gritty thing. It's like, yep, and that wasn't scripted. It was just threw it in there, and it just adds to the character. It was, if you've seen, I'm assuming you might have seen Red State. Michael Parks was the minister in that. And when I read the script, when he sent it to us, it's like, I bet Michael Parks is gonna be. And Bob said, yep, because it's just he's such a great actor, and just for as old as he is, and just dead on constantly. But
Yeah, they tear it up together. You guys definitely go see it. We have another film out, which they haven't really got the trailer out. It's making the film circuit right now, the film festival circuit. Late phases.
Late phases.
Did you guys ever see Stake Land? Jim Nichols movie or Mulberry Street. He just did a movie called Cold in July with was it Don Johnson, and it's a really good movie. Guy plays Dexter, Michael C. Hall. And Nick when I saw him, Mulberry Street, because he was doing the festivals at the same time I was doing the Rage at festivals, and we met in Montreal and hit it off and went to see each other's movies and whatever. Met this guy, Nick D'Amici. He writes the movies as well with Jim. And he played this character that I thought was just badass, like Charles Bronson badass. So we did this new movie and Nick is in it.
Yeah.
Playing a blind war veteran who battles werewolves in this old age community. And yeah, he comes off like, in all the reviews, have him as like if Charles Bronson was going to do a werewolf film, this would be it. You know, so and he's like a real badass in it. But he's blind. He has to hear the, you know, He uses his other senses to
An old daredevil.
yeah. You can hear them coming around the corner before they're there, and he sets up traps. It's really cool. But we got the chance to do some, I think, unique-looking werewolves that haven't been done before. But
And they wanted which was nice that they wanted to do the transformations practically. Hard thing was that he decided that it was going to be a camera move,
one single shot.
one single shot around the guy changing.
So
And the changing for stuff like that is insert leg, insert arm, something back altering and somehow get it to go together. And that, he said, I had to be back at the studio, so I didn't get to go down there for that. But I guess they planned for 1 day for shooting this transformation. It ended up being, they spent the first
4
day
days.
trying to.
First day was trying to make the motion control thing work. It just wouldn't hit the marks. It wouldn't do what it wanted to do. It was like, I knew it was good. So what happened was we ended up cutting like one of the big makeups out of the transformation sequence. But I guess it worked out really well. I haven't seen it, but it's one continuous move back and forth as this thing's going down. So, but yeah, if you ever, I don't know if anybody's ever, you guys know what motion control is? Computer-assisted camera. It's like it's on a gimbal, man. It moves
It's
everywhere.
a gimbal, it's got servo motors.
It goes on
and-
track back and forth, and it can go around stuff, and
But
yeah,
it can do it repeatedly and reliably, like dead on, over and over. There was technology that was used a lot in the original Star Wars. The Dykstra Cam was a big motion control rig based on industrial technology, like picker-placer robots and things like that. But just instead of having a claw up here, picking this up and moving it repeatedly, they put a camera up there and a spacecraft on another one, and that way they can take one X-fighter or X-wing fighter, shoot it, move it back, move that over a little bit, shoot it again, and it could be an entire fleet that they can then composite, because it was back on film at that time. So the less times you had to run a piece of film through an optical printer, the better, because every time you do it, it degrades the image, it starts getting more contrasty and grainier. So, but you can still get these for stuff like this type of project. Any questions about doing this stuff? And also, you might remember, he is a director as well. He's produced and directed 5 films.
well, more than that.
Yeah.
5 directed 5.
Right.
I'm just very curious, what is your favorite movie that you've been on or that you, in your life that you love? Your most favorite movie or movie?
That I've worked on or not worked on?
Either
Worked
or.
on.
Okay, well, favorite horror film. It'd probably still be The Exorcist, just because it really affected me. I'm Catholic too, so that.
I bet you like
With
Dusk
me.
Till Dawn, though.
That was good, too.
Yeah, you didn't like that's my movie, so I can't really.
But
really brag on it, so, you know. Yes, I'm very proud of that movie. But I mean, we grew up on just stuff like 1 Million Years BC, Jason the
Yeah.
Argonauts,
War of the Worlds, I love
War of
that.
the Worlds,
That
you know.
scared me when I was 5 years old.
Day the Earth Stood Still, all that.
Yeah.
I mean, we grew up on all that stuff. And the Hammer movies, when it comes to the 60s and 70s, we were watching all the reruns of the Hammer movies on all the late night horror host shows or Saturday afternoon movies.
Christopher Lee and on all those films, all those Dracula movies. Love those. Frankenstein, not so much. He looked kind of.
I always loved Frankenstein, but
But I mean, the makeup that they did on Chris Lee.
oh no, the Hammer ones.
I think personally, most fun that I've ever had was when we did The Rage that summer. It was like one big, long, fun summer of Nick and I were doing lights. I ended up playing a character in it, and but everybody, this was done by the studio. Everybody did everything. We were building the sets. It's like, what are we doing today? We got to make the set, and we built the Mad Scientist lab in the studio. And for years after that, it still was there. Maybe didn't have all the tables with the glassware and stuff, but the cage in the corner was where we put our paint. We had the big medical light for years until just a few years ago we took that down. But Nick and I were doing lighting, and I think besides him, everybody else that was on the lighting crew was like half our age, but I'll be damned if I want to let them young whippersnappers do something I can't do. And I lost, I think, 30 pounds that summer just running up and down ladders, sweating like a dog, almost falling off a cliff, you know, with what was it, a 10K or something like that?
Oh, God.
We were staking it down, and somebody said, "Al, look behind you." I looked around, it's like, oh, my foot is this far away from that drop right there. Maybe I want to think about my course of life right now. Maybe I'll move away. Let somebody else young do this. But then got to acting at I think one of the more memorable deaths of my career. Every other time I get my head chopped off, but that time.
This time I put a pipe up.
You put a pipe up my butt. Well, it was first there was the screwdriver, then the hammer.
The hammer, the screwdriver, and then the pipe.
And then, well, and then the
Oh, yeah,
ice saw
that's right, you're
through
right,
the
yes.
gut, and
He still wouldn't go down.
I still would go down. So what's her face? Misty Monday came running along with this pipe, you know, yeah. And then I digitally added my own poop to myself, so that was fun. But
Was there ever a time that you encountered something particularly challenging in terms of an effect that you were trying to create, and how did you overcome that? Like the biggest challenge that you can remember having to overcome?
Most of that was probably involved mechanical things, like the 12-foot violator for Spawn. It was a giant hydraulic puppet that literally $80,000 worth of machinery in it. That kind of craziness, which now that CG is taken totally over, you don't even do it that way. But that, I think, those things would be the most challenging.
Oh, yeah.
Like anything in water.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
We're getting ready to do a shark movie. It's going to make me sick again. But
Sharknado.
no, it's not that.
No.
Okay.
We're actually putting a mechanical shark in the water
Oh, okay.
for these fight sequences. But it's we did a movie called Eraser with Arnold Schwarzenegger, where they have that sequence in the zoo and they shoot out
aquarium or something like
the
that.
tank, and we had to make ones that swam in the water, that swam out of the tank when it exploded. Then we had the hydraulic ones that were snapping and moving around, that were fighting. The ones in the water, we had to make self-contained, and they had to move, and they were operated by air, so there was an air tank inside, and then there was these little pins and a little cord going out to the side, I believe. So
Yeah.
I remember having to pull them out, and that would pull the pin out and set off the air, and they'd just start
They would
doing
just-
this. And then they'd have to blow the glass, and it would go out, and I had to do that several times, because, you know, it doesn't work, and they blow the glass, they gotta replace, you know, all
And
this
fill it with
tank
water
glass,
again.
that you know becomes. And then we did this movie for that Gary did the sequel on, called Crocodile. Toby Hooper did the first one. We had the 30-foot crocodile we had. It's always hard when you're not shooting on like a water tank with a concrete bottom or something that you can secure your rigs to. They decided to shoot in Mexico. No, Gary's was in.
That's right.
We shot in Mexico.
Right.
And they had a lake that they wanted to shoot in, and we're like, okay, but you know, somebody's got to get down and test the bottom, see how firm it is, and see how much this rig's going to sink in there, this platform that the puppet goes on and everything. So they get it in the water and put it down, and it's all kind of okay. Then it rains a couple of days straight, and now the water level is higher than where we wanted it. Now the crocodile is barely getting out of the water. There's no way to drain it because it's a real lake, you know, they didn't know what to do. So, and the thing's sinking all the time in there. So it was kind of a nightmare. And, but you know, they worked it out and got their shots. And Gary actually, because he's an effects guy, utilized the same rig on the second movie better than the first movie.
Exactly, yeah.
So, and that shipped to India. Then after that, the Indians, I mean, they didn't want to ship it back because it cost so much to ship this giant crocodile over there that they left it over there, and Roger Corman went over and bought that thing and used it for one of those Croc movies, the Dino Croc something.
like that, yeah.
So he ended up bringing it back.
You two have disrupted my classroom for the last time.
What are you gonna do about it?
spank us?
She can't spank us. It's against the law.
Spanking would be too easy. I want to cause more permanent damage.
And cut! Curious? Visit theindygathering.com, a film festival, and so much more.
Introducing SoundForge Pro Mac, a 2-track audio editor reinvented by Mac users for Mac users, redesigned specifically for OS X. SoundForge Pro Mac features an elegantly refined interface. See everything at once, or toggle the view to see only the features you need. Record and edit high-resolution multi-channel audio with speed and precision. Process audio with a wide range of unique and powerful tools. Sony Creative Software now brings its industry-leading expertise and innovative product development philosophy to the Mac. SoundForge Pro Mac enhances your production workflow. It's the ideal complement to any digital audio workstation or non-linear editing environment. Redefining audio editing. SoundForge Pro Mac.
Welcome to Horror Hotel.
But it used to sit in our shop behind K&B in LA. We had that and a giant spider from Spiders.
Giant spider from Spiders.
Which was Gary's movie. This 30-foot spider.
And we had the same summer we worked on Crocodile and Spiders. Both, big giant boogity monsters and things like that. That was fun. That was a real fun summer there.
But these things were so big, the shells, they were hollow inside, and mechanics and whatever. We had nowhere in the shop to put them, so they sat in the parking lot at the shop forever. And homeless people moved into it. I'm not kidding. They moved in. We were just like, who's that guy going over under the creatures every day? And we went over and said, hey, man, what are you doing? He's like, he had his little pillow set up in there and everything. He was sleeping in there every day.
Yeah, the front half of the giant full-size croc, I think it went back behind the legs, but because they had such a low budget, it didn't have like real high-tech mechanics in it. One of the guys will actually get up on top and get inside, and we had a rig set up with a bicycle wheel so that the front legs would do this while some other people were pushing it along.
He's sitting there doing this, and the legs are going.
And they're pushing it along, and they had to frame it so that you can't see that it's only, I think it was big, like 15 feet long, longer than that. But enough where they can like run along beside it or dolly along beside it. This thing's, the mouth is opening and closing. It was largely fiberglass, but part of the skin up on the head, I believe, was urethane.
Skin flex.
Yeah, skin flex urethane. And, but on one of the takes behind the scene, Bob had this footage, and they do their take and, pushing along, and it's a cut, cut, cut. Hatch pops up, and little Ellen comes jumping out with that helmet with a little flashy light thing on it.
Yeah, it was like the thing from Johnny Quest with the fake crocodile hatch on the top. Yeah, that was funny. And then like the giant spider for that was when we were operating, it was all on an air rig, so it would move up and down, but the legs there was 4 or 5 legs we had just for that on the sides, and it was just people holding them. There were rods, and they would just get down and run like this and move the legs, So, but that was only used for certain shots.
There was sort of like the mid-size one, which was about 5.
That was the coolest one. That was about from here to here. And that one worked the best because we shot it green screen. We had a lot of removal shots of operators, but that looked really nice when it moved around.
They had the scare Getty. mouth that, it's like, oh, should this spider mouth look like, let's put hissy tubes in it.
Yeah.
So it opens up these little air blast tubes and it's just thrashing around, but that took a lot of cleanup to get the rods and stuff out of there, and it was large. They only used like some CGI for the long shots of the thing walking down the street, I think.
When it crawls up on the convention center.
Right.
Stuff.
For the most part, like early on in the film, when it just first comes out of the guy, and it's crawling along the wall, that was a lot of digital removal because obviously it's not going to be able to run on a wall its own, so it had.
But we did have the wire one that jumped off the table and ran, and it's about this big, and we had a cam motor inside that moved all the legs around, just like the toys that you probably see now at the toy store. Except then we had these two really thin wires that came out that you can't see. They went up to fishing poles basically, and that went off to rheostats that control the speed. So you'd have one operator on one side and another, and you'd move it toward each other. One would run toward, I'd run toward you, back and forth, and it would run around on the floor. And we came up with that because we did this movie called Indian in the City, which was the one with Tim.
Jungle to Jungle.
Jungle to Jungle, that's it. Okay. And there was these tarantulas in the movie, and they chased them around. We had to make these mechanical tarantulas, and we did the same thing with the wires coming out, fishing poles, dropped them down on the sand, had a little motor in them. So we just made a bigger version of it.
But all of these effects, I mean, these are all digital now, right? I mean, are they eventually taking over what you did in the past?
Yes and no. Some are digital. There's still a large group of filmmakers that want to use practical, like Guillermo del Toro, even though he uses a lot of digital, he also mixes it with practical. He always has to have something physical there. It just really depends on what it is. If it's a giant creature, there's really no reason to spend that kind of money to build something that you can really not have walk down the street, because you're going to see a platform and a rig. I mean, Jurassic Park was really great, and they still use the big puppets. And they're doing them now in the new one. But they use them for certain things, the close-ups and interacting with the actors, and the rest of the time, you're doing wide shots, these things running. It's the only way to do it.
Right.
And before that it was stop motion, so it wouldn't have been us anyway.
Right.
Go motion, But and then a lot of makeup effects we enhance with digital too. You see that things bubbling under your skin and things. We used to do that with bladders and everything. Now you can just reveal the final makeup and digitally take it down and bring it up. So,
which is exactly what we did for The Rage, for instance, when the first person transformed into one of the mutations. Like there was makeup on there, but as we pulled back, we had this little thing where his arm is rippling, and it's just I think it was like a fractal image fall off that we used to alter the shape of his arm. And said, okay, flow that way. But instead of taking the time, we really didn't have time to do the bladders.
3 hours out of our schedule.
Yeah.
So.
And we had a really tight schedule for that.
And it has to be more cost effective, I would think, to do the digital. Is that right?
Yes and no. Sometimes it's whether you want 30, 40 on a big movie, hundreds of people sitting around waiting for something to be pulled off like that, or they just want to shoot it and do it in post when there's only 2 guys sitting in a room. That's pretty much it. Because a lot of those digital effects will cost just as much as it would cost us to do it practically. It's just the time-saving thing and the crew-saving thing.
But yeah, the thing is, whenever you started being able to run like 3D programs on laptops, or a good high-end laptop, everybody and their brother started messing around trying to do that. It can be more cost-effective. However, we're finding out that for it to really be cost-effective, you send the work off to a country that the government subsidizes the film industry, and so it puts Americans out of work. Or unless you get some guy who maybe kind of knows the program and can pull it off.
Well, you're seeing it a lot now, like all the major visual effects houses are moving out of country and have set up divisions in India and China
and Canada.
And it's because they can't afford the labor here anymore.
Yeah.
Right, and because, for instance, what we were watching, was a thing, there was this protest out in California, like, don't send the jobs away. But, they wear this T-shirt with this green square that says, this is your film without VFX. It's just a green screen.
Yeah.
But they were talking about in this doc, I think it was on YouTube, take a look for it. But they're talking about how these countries, like in Canada, Vancouver, places like that, the government will like give them 30% of the budget that the company doesn't have to pay for. So if an American company in LA wants to compete, like say it's a thing where it's a $13 million budget, they're going to $10 million visual effects budget, but the company in Canada, they're going to get $3,000 from the government. So in order to compete, the company that's here has to do $13 million worth of work, but we only have $10 million bucks for you. So somewhere along the line, those companies have to eat that. A couple years ago, after Rhythm and Hughes got an Academy Award for visual effects for Life of Pi. Brilliant work. A week and a half later, after getting this Academy Award, they went out of business. They shut the doors. So they just can't compete with these companies in Bulgaria and Russia.
Well, the other thing is too, the producers, that visual effects are really hard to track down changes, and they'll ask for changes because they can do it. It's easy for them to do. So they go, I'd really like his head to be a different shape tomorrow. So now you're like, okay, look, we only had 2 passes at this. Now it's 6 passes, 10 passes. They never want to pay for the passes. You're doing the work, but they don't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
But the director changes things all the time, and part of it is organizational. With them having to, you need somebody in charge who's really keeping track and keeping the director on track and keeping the producers on track and going, look, you guys can't just make the change because it's going to cost this, and they don't have that a lot in visual effects. It's really hard.
It is, because a lot of times it's one of these things, in that little documentary I was telling you about, they've got this animation where they talk about, they explain it very clearly, and then this is a fixed bid job, but we want changes, and I think you've seen that.
Yeah, I saw that, it's funny.
And they talk, literally every other industry in film business, like if you have carpenters, they're gonna work, they're gonna make a salary, they're gonna make whatever their wages, they're gonna make their benefits, their union stuff. Everybody gets that except for visual effects guys, because it's like, okay, if you're building a set, you build a set. If you need to stay around to build another set, it's additional money, they get more money coming in. The visual effects guys, like he said, when they come back wanting changes, but okay, so we have to keep people on for another month. You got your money already, fix it, do it. You pay for it, it comes out of the profits of the company, hence like Rhythm and Hughes going under. Any further questions? Now I've been ranting and raving and carrying on.
Do you guys ever have to work with storyboard artists?
Yeah, we storyboard everything. So,
or ask them
or
to.
They do. Usually the director will have someone he works with. When I do it, I storyboard with one of the guys at the shop, or John Thurston.
John Thurston.
We usually just storyboard. Anymore, I just storyboard when I direct just heavy effect sequences. I won't storyboard the movie like I used to, like storyboard at all. But it's kind of worthless. You get on the set, you tell the actors this is basically a setup, and then you see what they're going to do, because you storyboard it. It's like everything, all the directions change now. They're coming this way, it doesn't even matter. Just throw it out. But all that counts is the effects work, only so that you can bid it out properly. You can figure out what's a visual effects, what's a puppet, what's a makeup, and you can see it put together, even though it'll change a little. But okay, I only have that one shot I'm building that for, and I'm building this for that. And
if I don't have to paint the back side of it, I'm not going to paint the back side.
I only need half of it for this thing. I only see it from one side,
Yeah.
So
anymore with some of the budgets, the films that we're working on, it's, we need 8 weeks and this much money, and it turns out to be 4 weeks and about half of what they asked for. So it's like, okay, you got to figure out what you need to see. So they're starting to, you know, ask
They
them.
start with the kitchen sink and then you whittle it down to exactly what they need.
Right, and then you have to tell them what they can have. I mean, it's that part of the politics that's not a lot of fun. It's like, I want to shoot it, you know, full all movie. It's like, yeah, you can't afford that, buddy. Back off a little bit. Let's figure out what.
So that's
need
when
to
you
see.
tell them, you only see the hand and then the shadow on the wall.
You can afford the hand, you can't afford the rest of the creature. I mean, even on, was it Jugface? We have a relationship with Andrew Van der Hurdy-Gurdy, and he keeps calling us back and he keeps giving us smaller and smaller budgets. But for Jugface, it was mostly bloodletting in that thing, but Bob was nice enough to throw in a creature for the big payoff, because they were not planning on showing it. But then they turned around and came back and said, you know, we got to show this. So
They didn't show it though.
no, they didn't show it. They said, you know, Dave Greathouse down
They did
there.
it anyway, and then they didn't show
And then
it.
they didn't show it. But they couldn't afford it. I mean, every time they come to us, the budget gets smaller and smaller and smaller.
So you guys and your skill sets are secure versus the digital effects that are going overseas. You guys.
No, we were
guys
always
are
nervous
putting
about it.
in-
I mean, we were puking our guts out when Jurassic Park came out.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when we saw the test footage for that film, and went, oh my God, we're not going to be building any of this stuff anymore eventually.
Oh, basically.
Now they're doing digital old age makeups and everything. It's really nice stuff. But I don't know. I think there's always going to be certain filmmakers and certain things that are practical no matter what. And just, I don't want to see it all go digital. A lot of people don't. So.
As long as the Kevin Smiths and the Tarantinos and the Rodriguez's are around, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, and David Fincher's, all those guys, even though they use a lot of digital, they still
want
love the
something in
practical.
front of the camera there, yeah. Oh, go ahead, please.
Oh, yeah. I imagine you keep a pretty good working relationship with the cinematographer, the guy shooting all this.
Oh yeah,
doing
we
the
usually
effects.
we usually have we're usually right on them, right up front to save our stuff. Yeah, like can you throw some more shadow on it? You know?
Exactly.
It's too lit. You know? Yeah, no, and they're usually pretty good with us and know what we need. And usually when we need to, we tell them to put linoleum filter on it.
Yeah. Linoleum filter. That's right. Turn on the light, have it, or double it, off, on, off. Okay.
No,
we're
I'll
gonna
tell
go
you,
off.
like we shot this film in India, and I still think it's over there, but guy that shot it, dude, was this wonderful guy. Like he was kind of old cinematographer that shot all these movies over there. And he's just lighting everything with Kinos around all the effects, like 360 Kinos. And I'm like looking at the footage, and I'm going, dude, this is way too lit. This is a monster movie. It should look like The Howling, you know, dark shadows. Come on. And he would just go, it'll be all right. And then he'd show me the laptop, and he'd crunch the black levels down. And I'd go, yeah, okay, it's better. But, and of course, the final movie comes out, and it's lit. It's just lit. And I'm like, whatever. But unfortunately, you don't have control of that. But
Do you send a core crew on that kind of thing, because it gets expensive? Do you send a core crew over and then fill in locally, or?
no, we'll send whatever we need from here.
Okay.
And then, yeah, if they want an assistant or, you know, to augment the crew with somebody locally, yeah.
Like the upcoming, the Yoga Hosers, they really can't afford a lot of people, so Bob will go out himself to do the stuff, and then maybe he'll pick up.
But it's LA, we know everybody there, so it'll be like, hey, you want a day check, you know? So, but yeah, usually, to be honest, the worst thing about shooting overseas is shipping all your stuff over, and then hoping you get your equipment back. So we sent all our equipment to India and never got it back. So,
or it came back after it sat on it.
no, they never sent the tools back. That,
Right.
You know, they kept. Let me tell you, they also freaked out because we had Makita battery tools, and on the set in India they have like one drill, plug-in drill that is used for like 4 different sound stages, and they're always fighting over who gets it. You know, who gets the power saw. Oh man, they were freaking out. They didn't, you know, super glue. Oh my God, you know.
Thank you for coming.